You're listening to the New Story podcast from New Story Church in Kansas City. To learn more about New Story Church, visit our website at www.newstory.church.
Welcome, everybody, to the Equip Podcast, equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. My name's Jeremy, one of the pastors, work with our students and our creative team here at New Story. And I'm not alone. I'm joined by one of our other pastors. Say hey.
Hey, what's up? This is Pierce. I serve as our teaching pastor.
You do. Pull that mic just a little bit closer to you as you're sitting there.
We are in the lobby right now.
We are in the lobby.
And we're vibing in here. It's pretty nice.
We got plants, we got lights. Obviously, you can't see any of that. We had stuff set up because of a podcast that comes out. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, June 18th, there's a podcast coming out tomorrow, June 19th, which is Juneteenth. I did with Ray Jarrett. It'll be video and audio, so you can check that out.
But this one is not video.
This one's not video. We don't need to see Pierce right now. He looks kind of homeless.
Well, that's unfair.
What shirt are you wearing? What is that?
Mount Vernon Mountaineers. It's one of my shirts from when I graduated high school. Listen, I've been unpacking boxes, man. We moved this weekend.
Yeah. Also, that's awesome. Congratulations. I'm glad you guys got a house.
Yeah, we got a house.
In your house.
Yeah, we got in our house. We moved on Friday. The boys that were sick all last week. Alex, Thursday going into Friday, woke up feeling super sick and is still sick. And we did the whole move with 3 sick people, my mother-in-law, and a handful of people. But everything went super well. It was really easy.
Yep.
Ish. Yeah, unpacking's the worst part, though.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm wearing a shirt from high school.
Honestly, I don't mind unpacking because you're nesting. Is that what it's called, right? You're nesting.
Yeah, but
it's kind of fun.
What's hard about because most of our stuff was in storage, and so then not no more. But then you have to find a spot for it.
Yeah, it's true. We've lived without this for 6 months. What do we do now?
Yeah, then you got to find stuff. That's fun. The boys love it though, which is great.
The house?
Yeah,
great.
Kai just is just like the yellow house because our house is yellow. If you don't know, but he just calls it the yellow house and Kai's house, not mommy or daddy's house. Kai's house.
Well, it was Kai's church.
Well, it's Kai's church when we came here.
Mm-hmm. Well, today we have a couple subjects we'll get into. One is kind of a cultural thing happening in the world right now, and then one, I kind of peek behind the curtain, kind of like what we do with Ashley, but a little bit on what Pierce does, and what I help with as well, and what did before he got here and helping him do now. So we'll talk about that. But the first one, so I'm trying to think how to start this out. One thing that we want to do here at New Story is be a church that unchurched people like to attend and feel comfortable attending, which means that often we have to wade into things that are a little bit heavier, that our culture is talking about, that people that are far from God think about and care about. And so that's why we talk about some of the stuff that we do here that may not be, if you've been around church for a while or just kind of like, why the heck are you talking about all this like cultural upheaval stuff? Why are you talking about all these cultural events and different stuff like that? Well, because our world is talking about them, and if we want to be effective in reaching our community, we want them to know that we're considering and thinking about and talking about the very things that they are worried about. So it'd be very easy to just bury our heads in the sand and read the Bible, but that's not what we're necessarily called to only do. So, and seemingly time and time again, it keeps stinking happening. There are megachurch pastors that find themselves in hot water because of decisions that they've made in the past or decisions they're making in the present. And this last week was no exception. We had two prominent names that you probably know one, probably don't know the other, but that have had some stuff come out. The first one is Tony Evans. Do you know Tony Evans?
Yeah, we did a handful of studies. The administrative pastor that I worked with, Lane, who I love deeply at my last church, he loved Tony Evans.
Yeah,
and so
dude.
I'm sure he is not feeling great
Yeah.
about hearing this news.
Yeah, I love Tony Evans too. I've recommended his books on race many times. He spoke I got to meet Tony Evans and shake his hand and talk to him for a minute at a Unite KC event that he spoke at, and I shot the event, and it was really, really special. Fantastic communicator, very thankful for his voice. But if you're unfamiliar who Tony Evans is, he founded the Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, which is a church in Dallas in 1976. So he's been around a minute.
Wait, he's in Dallas?
He's in Dallas.
Dude, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of these pastors are in the DFW
That's
area.
why I left Texas, dude.
They're both in the DFW area, unfortunately.
Okay.
But so it was a bad weekend for Dallas. But beside the Mavericks situation. So he founded this church in 1976, which has grown from 10 people in a home to over 10,000 members. His fame has grown. His radio program has grown. It's called The Alternative with Tony Evans. He's got podcasts out there. He's got a study Bible. His radio goes around 1,000 stations worldwide. He's well known for serving as a chaplain for the Cowboys.
And speaking of the Dallas Mavericks.
And speaking of the Dallas Mavericks, he did that for the Dallas Mavericks as well. And he's written several faith-based books that I've recommended, I've read.
And tons of curriculums and tons of studies to be done. Like the guy puts out a lot of stuff that's been used by lots of churches and lots of people to grow people to be more like Christ.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of good work.
A lot of very good work. And I'm very thankful for him. Now, on to what happened. He put out a statement. It's on the church's website. Put out a statement. I just want to read a section of that statement. It says, the foundation of our ministry has always been our commitment to the Word of God as the absolute supreme standard of truth, which we are to conform our lives. When we fall short of that standard due to sin, we're required to repent and restore our relationship with God. A number of years ago, I fell short of that standard. I am therefore required to apply the same biblical standard of repentance and restoration to myself that I have applied to others. I have shared this with my wife, my children, and our church elders, and they have lovingly placed their arms of grace around me. While I have committed no crime, I didn't use righteous judgment in my actions. In light of this, I am stepping away from my pastoral duties and am submitting to healing and restoration, to a healing and restoration process established by the elders of his church. This will afford me a needed time of spiritual recovery and healing. So this decision wasn't considered sudden, according to the church leaders who said he made this decision after a tremendous amount of prayer and multiple meetings with the church elders. Now, it's a fairly vague statement. We don't know what this sin is. Often what happens in these situations is our mind is left to assume the worst. And so we don't know. It's not our job to know necessarily, but he is taking a step down from ministry after 40 years of effective ministry there in Dallas. And we don't know what that restoration process looks like. I'm sure we'll find out more. But that was just one of them this last week. The other one is, or did you have any thoughts or anything?
Well,
There's not a
let's
whole
talk
lot
about
to
them
that.
too, and then we can come back with some of the thoughts that we had.
Okay. Let me take it real quick.
Yeah. Well, even with the second guy is Robert Morris, and he's of Gateway Church, and it's again in the DFW area. And so he's the founder, just like Tony was, and pastor of Gateway Church in 2000. And it went and has grown to like 10 campuses and around
25,000 people a week.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's great. It's an enormous church. You probably don't know that you know Gateway. Carrie Job, the musician, came from Gateway Worship. You know Carrie Job from the the Revelation song and many other prominent songs. She does a lot with Passion now too. So that's just one name. But Robert Morris is the founding pastor there, planning to hand it over to his son in the next couple years, I believe. But a woman came forward, Cindy Clemenshire, and accused him of sexual assault. And to his credit, he did own up to sexual assault of Cindy. And this was his statement. When I was in my early 20s, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady in a home where I was staying, he said. It was kissing and petting and not intercourse, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. So even owned up beyond just the one situation to beyond that. But as things became more clear, there was an important detail that Robert happened to leave out of his statement. This took place when he was in his 20s and the young woman was 12.
And it happened for a couple of years. So from when this lady was 12 to 16.
Yeah. So Morris, if you don't know his background, which you don't necessarily need to, but he was a traveling evangelist and pastor in his early 20s. He'd become close with this young woman's family.
I think he was married at the time.
He was married at the time. And he had said that at any time he would spend time with this girl, he told his wife it was counseling sessions. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's kind of ugly. According to a statement posted on social media from elders at the church, the allegations were brought to light 35 years ago, so it's not something that they were unaware of. Morris added this: in March of 1987, the situation was brought to light, and it was confessed and repented of. I submitted myself to the elders of Shady Grove Church, which would become Gateway one day. That was kind of in its the beginning stages. And the young lady's father, he submitted himself to the young lady's father as well. They asked me to step out of ministry and receive counseling and freedom ministry, which I did. So he worked on, stepped out, did some counseling, stepped away for 2 years to receive this counseling that was overseen and administered by the elders of the church, and no police were involved. Now, again, this is a minor, and one of the statements that Robert Morris made in his statement was that he received forgiveness and restoration by her dad, which she disagrees with. That never happened, and that the only reason he took time down was because her father said he was going to go to the police. Now, this is just competing stories, just kind of presenting that there. But no police were involved in this situation, which is why the elders knew about it for 35 years, but it wasn't really addressed more fully. So he returned to ministry in March of 89, 2 years after this abuse was exposed. He says, with blessing again from the girl's father and the church. She disagrees with that. But that's really heavy, because on the surface it seems like, wow, he owned up to it. That's good. But leaving out probably the most important detail of all of it, that she was a minor.
It's hard to sit with.
It is.
And as pastors, it's almost unfathomable to me. Like, and because here's the thing, I wrote like when you were talking about this, he submitted himself to the elders of Shady Grove Church. And if I was an elder, maybe, and here's the thing, maybe in their minds it was a different time, but that's still a 12-year-old girl that you know about. And like, it's unfathomable to me that if I was an elder on that board, to being like, okay, he repented.
We should get some counseling. And
let's get him some counseling and let's get him back in here, because it'd be good for our church. Yeah. And eventually it was. Like, I mean, let's just, his church grew and it exploded. And so part of this like conversation is like, I don't understand. One, if I knew that, maybe this is maybe it's the flesh side coming out of me. The flesh side of me coming out, that like, if I knew that about my pastor, I don't know if I could sit under that. Mm-hmm. Especially if it was involved with a minor. And maybe even let's carry out, let's say she wasn't a minor. Mm-hmm. Like, if I was in a church and my pastor had an affair, whether that's, and he's totally repentant and he brings it to board and stuff, I would still I would wrestle with that. You know, like I would wrestle with that kind of conversation of like, what does that look like? But then that's not the case. It was with a minor, and that's like criminal. Like, you could be you're arrested for that. Right. And you're registered for that.
Yeah, and the fact that no police were involved, it saved that from happening. Like for example, I work with 7th graders, 12-year-olds. Yeah. At 12 and up, and students. And if anything if I ever did anything like that or anything else like that, I can't imagine the church just being like, all right, let's take some time off.
Give some counseling.
Then, and yeah, that would.
And the thought process is probably like, well, he's married.
Yeah.
You know, he has his wife, and then like, let's get them counseling, separate them out, you know, and then like, let's bring it back in, restore them. Yeah. And because of the whole conversation, it comes around like, how is someone restored? Especially to like the ministry aspect of it. And that's a hard conversation.
Yeah. Cause that was the question I wanted to bring up from here is where a pastor disqualifies himself, because he did disqualify himself.
Clearly.
Should restoration to that position be afforded?
And that's my question. That's a hard question, because with this and Tony Evans, we don't know the details about Tony Evans, and we're not going to like imply what we think it is. But with this, like, that's a hard conversation to have. It's like, how does someone go about being restored to this position? And when you look at the biblical aspect of it, I think me and you both saw the same post by an account called Honest Youth Pastors, and he was just saying, I don't want to be that guy. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking for biblical evidence of a pastor being restored to position after falling from sin, you're not going to
disqualifying himself.
Yeah, after disqualifying himself, you're not going to find it. Mm-hmm. And so then we have a plethora of stories of pastors now who have fallen. Use this quote, and we'll talk about it in a second. Fallen from grace, fell into sin, and then being restored to that. One, should they be? Mm-hmm. Or, like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So the first thing to just address is that there are very clear qualifications for someone who's going to take that position of pastor, elder, overseer. We find those in Timothy and Titus, and I believe they're qualifications that are often, especially in evangelical circles, often overlooked or outright ignored because of people's connections to other people, or because of the charisma that they have. Character is often an afterthought if they're charismatic. And so when we're talking about disqualifying from ministry, we're talking about these qualifications are the things that they did that violate those specific qualifications that would then make you take a back seat. So like you said, with Tony, we don't really know, but specifically Robert Morris' situation. When he was in his 20s, he disqualified himself. Should restoration be afforded? I think there's an easy answer to this. And I would say just put it in any other context. For example,
like a teacher at a school.
If something would disqualify you from working at a school or a daycare or something like that, shouldn't that disqualify you from being in pastoral ministry as well?
I think so. Because,
like, imagine one of your kids' teachers got found out for this. They're never working in school again.
No.
And we'd be like, dang right.
Never mind. I don't want to go into that story. I have a connection to like a former person I worked with that had a lot of these same things with like students and stuff. But I feel with this conversation, we try to justify what's taking place, and especially with the charismatic aspect of it, and like the huge growth. And by all means, like, hey, all this stuff is working. That was in his 20s. He was young and dumb then, you know? And yeah, I think it's easy when you put it in any other circumstance, but then like you do see it in other circumstances too, still happen. But if we're supposed to be the church, if we're supposed to be Christ followers, we're supposed to we want to be like Christ, even if the world allows people to do that.
Yeah.
Why should we try to make rules and work around and do this? And listen, God gives grace and He is abundant in that. And praise God that we can receive grace, that we can call out to Him and He show us grace and mercy and forgiveness. Yeah. But this aspect of, and I don't want us to come across like we're being super judgmental, because we're not. But that position, there's qualifications. Yeah. And we can't pick and choose when we want to follow those.
Yeah. Yeah. There's absolutely, like you're saying, there's absolutely grace. available in Jesus as redemption. There can be reconciliation, but there are consequences. Yeah. And just like that teacher that would do that, there is reconciliation, there is grace, there's forgiveness available in Jesus, but that doesn't mean we skirt the consequences for our actions. And
we can't just dismiss a background check.
Right. And that Honest Youth Pastor, that Instagram page, and he's got a YouTube page as well. I agree with some of the things on there. Some it's whatever. But one of the things that he said that I really resonated with me, and I think it kind of ties into this broader culture when it comes to celebrity pastors, if you want to call them that, or just megachurch pastors that become just a huge name. It can be dangerous. He said we should be far more concerned about the reputation of Christ and his bride than we are about the reputation of the leader that disqualified himself. Because that is often what we do, is we run to the defense of the individual, because they would never do that. They couldn't do that. That was back then. And we make justifications for them. We should be far more concerned with the reputation of Christ and his bride, and think about the people. Like I said at the beginning of this, we want to be a church that unchurched people look to and say, hey, they're talking about stuff that I care about and that matters to me. And they're trying to do this in a way that I may not agree with, all this virgin birth stuff that they talk about. But man, our community, our culture, our neighborhood would be a lot worse off if they weren't in it. Yeah. I want that to be people's first thought when they come to this. And he's not like that mega church pastor. He's not like that other Christian that sucks that I know.
Well, even in what you're just saying there, because I wrote that down right before we started, is because people who don't maybe have this super biased opinion, or maybe a skewed version of what they think church is, because they see these things happening, and then they see people will point and be like, that's why I don't go to church, because of that pastor right there and that pastor. There's all these pastors who are failing and this, and I don't want to be a part of that. That's what's wrong with the church in America, is all these pastors are falling into sin and no one's holding them accountable. And that's, again, we want to be a church where we can still talk about these things. This is reality for us. We don't want to just brush it under the rug and not talk about it. And because you, me, and Dennis, we're all still prone to sin. And we have safe checks for us for this purpose. And and you were talking about we're far more concerned about the reputation. We should be far more concerned about the reputation of Christ and his bride than we are about the reputation of the leader that disqualified himself. When I heard about these two, I didn't know who Robert Morris was, and so I didn't really care. I cared in the fact that he was a pastor that fell into sin, and then I found it was a minor. That was rough. But Tony Evans, I did, and I was hurt a little bit. Yeah. That I was
feel the sting.
You're like, oh, not another one. And you kind of hurt for that, and he said, I underlined this when you were reading it. It's I'm stepping away from my pastoral duties and submitting to a healing restoration process established by the elders. I ran to almost in my mind to defend him because of all the good he's done and how he's resonated with me. But here's the shortfall, and not just in pastors' lives, but in all of our lives. Yeah. Because it said a number of years ago, I fell short of that standard. That could have been a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And we don't know what happened in that moment. Let's say it's 5 years ago. Let's just fill in the blank. Let's say it was whatever happened 5 years ago. Maybe he addressed it with his wife then. But then for 5 years, he continued to lead, knowing with this hidden sin that happened. Yeah. And that's hard. And even in our own personal lives, sin is dangerous. And it is, and we try to skirt around it. We try to white knuckle and then try to get better. I won't do that again when we talk about sin. But sin quickly entangles you. And it's like shackles to us, and it'll trip you up.
I think I read that somewhere.
That's in the Bible somewhere. Hebrews 12 somewhere. Talking about, because Hebrews is all about running the race. He's but throw off anything that hinders you. And Jesus even goes out to far off to say, it's if your eye causes you to sin, he says, pluck it out. He doesn't say just keep it in the corner, in a drawer. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. He's it's better to go into heaven with one hand than with two hands go to hell. Yeah. And it's we feel and even sin, I believe, is described as a roaring lion ready to pounce on you. or Satan is, yeah. And he tempts you. He's like a roaring lion. And so it's like with our sin, this hidden sin for, these pastors, like it didn't just start out of the blue. Like you're having an affair on your wife with a 12-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. But there was probably a pattern that led up to all these different things that happened.
Yeah.
And it's like if you have a lion that's sin, you put that in your closet and you're like, it's hidden. I can't see it.
Yeah.
It's just waiting for you.
Yeah.
Like you put yourself
the monster in the closet.
The monster in the closet. It's there. Like because you can't see it, but it's there in your life. But he says, cut it off. And so that's like, even with, take pastors out of it just for believers who are trying to faithfully follow God. Mm-hmm. Sin is so dangerous and it's so powerful, and sometimes it's pleasurable. And that's alluring. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to fight that temptation. But yet, like, we're to pursue holiness. Mm-hmm. And I think about Tony Evans, someone who like probably has a study on holiness. Mm-hmm. He's probably preached on holiness 40 times in his like career.
Yeah.
And he's still prone to sin. Mm-hmm. And he fell into it, the temptation. And so that's why we have to be proactively like mindful of like where our eyes are looking, where our hands are going, where our minds are wandering. Because if you're not, he says, take captive every thought. Because most likely all these circumstances happened with the thought that they didn't go, it was unchecked.
Yeah.
Because your mind can wander so quickly and so far without you having to lift a finger.
I know, dude, it's crazy. Yep.
And so that's just like when we go into the power of sin, and like that's what the Psalm series 2 has been so helpful. And you're teaching this week on Psalm 51. Mm-hmm. And Psalm 51 is what you're going to learn on Sunday. It's about David and Bathsheba and the consequences of that action. Yeah. And that thought that led somewhere. Mm-hmm. And
Psalm 51 is the repentance psalm.
The repentant psalms of that circumstance. Mm-hmm. And it's deep and it's heart-wrenching story. And
but in that situation, I was rereading 2 Samuel, when Nathan comes to David and confronts him. God said, "Hey, you're done with leadership." And he's like, "You're never going to hold positions like this again." Like there was so many things that I'm like, this kind of ties.
So that's what God says to David, or like through through Nathan to David.
Yeah.
I guess will you talk about it on Sunday at all? Would that be like, or would that be a little?
Yeah, no, I plan to. Yeah.
While you're looking it up, yeah. We just want you to be very mindful of how you spend your time, what kind of media you consume, and then just to not go unchecked. And that's where having accountability and having people you trust in your life really matters. And that's where, like, for us as pastors, this is why we have our pastoral advisor team. This is why, we have this like dynamic we do, is so that way we have built-in checks for us that we're accountable to our wives first, and then we're accountable to one another, and then we're accountable to the pastoral advisor team, and we're accountable to the church. And so if our church members see something that's like, what in the world is going on with Pierce? Like, they have every right to go to you or to a pastoral advisory team member and be like, hey, this happened. What can I talk to you about that? And that's scary. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. It's when talking about addressing sin in a pastor. That's a super scary thing.
Yep.
Because there's a position, title, authority given. Mm-hmm. But in these cases, like, I wish, especially with the Robert Morris one, the dad, here's the thing. He probably felt like he was doing the right thing by going to the elders. Mm-hmm. And praise God he did.
Yeah.
And that's probably, again, maybe a lack of like just knowledge about like law. But if he's threatening to go to the police, like, he knew the law well enough
to know that he was going to be screwed if he did.
So that's where I'm like,
that Robert Morris would be screwed if he
Yeah. So like, that's where I'm like, you dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
Like the dad did, but just let the dad felt safe enough to go to the elders to address that, which is, great for him. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Samuel.
You're fine. No, it's fine. I'll go through it on Sunday, but is the Lord just saying I had a hand of blessing on you that like you completely thwarted and gave up for what? For this woman who created in God's image, but she ain't yours. And then he killed the guy
that was
who was her husband. And so all this calamity, all this stuff is going to come to you now because of it. You're going to face the consequences for your sin. Another one that you and I were talking about earlier today, another pastor similar to this situation, pastor of Hillsong, New York, Carl Lentz. Yeah, he was pastor there for several years. Like, just blew up. So cool to watch when that happened. And a lot of scrutiny came because it was Hillsong and they were blowing up. And but there was a lot of good that they were doing. And Carl Lentz was still is an incredibly charismatic speaker, teacher, and he cheated on his wife and had a drug addiction to his ADD medicine, Ritalin and other things. Like, he had addiction to those and was abusing those, and it was an astronomical fall from grace, if you will.
Yeah, he was like a celebrity pastor. So like, if you could think like for example, Justin Bieber, that was his pastor, and they were super. Selena Gomez and like Justin Bieber was super close to Carl Lentz, and then you see this fall from grace that takes place. And I mean, it like wrecked, but there's a whole bunch of surrounding things that are happening too. And they have a podcast that you recommended to me that I was listening to today, and the entire time I'm like, wow, this is hard to listen to because they're very open, and they really.
So really, what it is before, he took about 4 years, got fired, obviously took about 4 or 5 years off. It's been a while.
I think 4 years. Yeah, I think COVID when that happened.
Yeah. Took a lot of time off and just didn't respond to anything. Just went dark. And in that darkness, they were seeking healing for himself from drug addiction and abuse, and also the therapy and work through the stuff that he had done. And his wife did the same as well. And so just about a month ago, he announced that he was starting a podcast, like every other white man in America. And
that's two that are doing one right now.
And it the first episode answered a lot of the questions people had, because they did go dark. They didn't talk with anyone like publicly, and they were very public.
I was about to say he was very public. Yeah, and I'm sure that he even says that on the podcast. So we don't want to give too much away, but the podcast is really good. But he even says like that was hard for me to not voice anything, get opinions, because people were making up things, and not like a lot of it was true. Yeah. But there was a lot of it that was false. But I could. But he's like, but also, he's like, I worked on my inside, like myself first, worked on our marriage, and then was trying to restore my family, and I'm not there yet in the podcast, and so I don't know what their future plans are. But it's been 4 years of them working through this and this restoration process for their himself.
Yeah. Not to get restored back to ministry.
Yeah, not to
just
ministry.
To restore their marriage and their family.
And so that's also the one of the qualifications. This is the thought. This is where I was going with the qualifications: is your household to be in order. And so if a pastor, just to think of the practicalities, let's say fall from grace and like how to like an affair, like if it's taken Carl Lentz outside of ministry 4 years to get to a place where he can do a podcast with his wife and she can ask him open questions during the entire time. What about those the 4 previous years? How can he meet any spiritual needs for the people of his congregation?
Yeah, no chance.
There's no chance. That's just because the weight of pastors is just too much.
Yeah. So I would encourage it. It's I was nervous when he said he was starting something. I'm like, oh man.
But I've never heard him.
Being a podcast, so it's okay.
Yeah, and I never heard it. I never heard him speak before this. I knew who he was just because it was a big thing, and I was worried about that because I knew he was very charismatic and really big and stuff like. So I was worried he would be like, "I'm starting this new thing, and it's gonna be great." But it's not tough to listen to, but it is. You can find yourself there.
Yeah. And one of the things, maybe it's in the episode that you're listening to right now, the second one, he does 2 with his wife, and then he does a third one. There's only 3 out right now. He's got a third one with his kids.
When he talks about his kids, I cried.
Dude, his kids were honest and talked, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So go watch these. But one of the things that he said was, as he started to heal, people were like, "Hey, man, we're looking forward to your comeback. Like when you come back, we want to join with you. We want to be a part of your team, whatever." They were expecting a church comeback, and he said, "I wasn't interested in any comeback. The only comeback I was worried about was the only comeback I was worried about was coming back to be your husband and their father." And
that's what I said on Sunday is like my role has changed as like an individual. When I had kids, it's like my role now is not just to watch out for myself. It's not just now to watch out for Alex. It's how to show my boys how to lead in a healthy way, their families. And I don't know what their future is going to hold. I don't they're going to be PKs. And so if pastors' kids, if they're going to work in ministry, fantastic. And I want to show them what it looks like to do that. But like with this whole process is like, we like want to lead our families, like no matter what you're a pastor or not, like you want to I hope and pray that you want to lead your family well and to do so, but it all starts inward. Like your approach to the throne of grace is the starting point. It has to be. And you can't fix in your own strength. You can't, because David, like you talked about on Sunday, he tried to put matters in his own hands. And where did it lead? It led to someone getting murdered. So left to your own devices, left to sin, you're going to keep sinning and fall into that spiral where all these people take place. And so it's hard. And but I do want to say this caveat, because I kept saying this so that way we can come back to it so I remember and I'd forget. And then I keep saying the word fall from grace.
Oh, yeah.
That is something that you hear all the time. You hear disgraced pastor or fall from grace. But here's the caveat with that phrase. We understand what it's trying to say.
Yeah.
But also like God's grace is abounding. And so, yes, they have fallen in the eyes of man.
Fallen from people's graces.
But people's graces. But there's always grace for those who call out in the name of Jesus. And so that's what we had talked about earlier. I just want to make that distinction because I kept saying it, and I keep forgetting to go back to it.
Because that came from Carl Lentz. He was saying, I don't feel like a disgraced pastor, I've fallen from grace. If anything, I've received more grace.
I've fallen into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially from his wife, from his kids, and then he knows from the Lord. So, and even in verse 1 of Psalm 57 is, "Be gracious to me, Lord. Have mercy on me, God."
Yeah.
So that's a great prayer to start with in all these circumstances.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll wrap that up there. Go to a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're going to we'll do a little behind the scenes of just some of the things you and I do, and how that some decisions are made. I think it'd be really interesting. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Equip Podcast, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. So what we're going to talk about here in just a moment is really how we figure out what we're going to be teaching on a regular basis, like on Sundays, or maybe even what we're going to discuss here in a podcast or in Equip. But before we do that, you thought I forgot.
Dude, I forgot. And then, I didn't forget. I was like, oh, he didn't do it.
It's riddle time with Pierce.
Okay. We're going to get all the serious stuff out because it's like back and forth.
Yeah. So I forgot to do it up front. So we're just going to throw it in right here.
I mean, I wasn't going to throw it out.
Yeah, you aren't going to bring it up. Okay, so this one's a little bit more off the beaten path. This one is not a standard riddle.
Great.
This is a
fantastic.
You gotta figure out You got to figure it out.
Shocker. I've had to figure all these out. And the only ones I've gotten, you've given me hints.
This is different. Okay, so I have a glass green door.
A glass green door.
That only certain things can go through.
Only certain things can go through. A glass green door.
Like glass green door. I'm going to name stuff. I'm going to say something I'm taking through the door, and then you name something you're going to take, and I'll let you know if you can take it. You with me? Okay.
I'm there with you.
So with our glass green door, I'm going to take a ball. What are you going to take?
A chair.
No, you're not.
No chair. I'm writing that down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I didn't think through a bunch of things. You can keep naming stuff if you want.
I'll take a plant.
No, you're not. You're not going to take a plant through.
I'll take a TV.
No.
I'll take a coffee mug.
Or
like a mug glass.
You could take coffee through.
Coffee, I can.
You can take coffee through. That'd be really enjoyable. I'm missing my coffee right now. I'll take coffee through.
All right, so pause on this game real quick. Riddle. Now,
you have to figure out why certain things can go through and certain things can't.
All right, but a cup can't and a mug can't.
Mm-mm.
All right. Okay. Headphones.
No, those aren't going.
No
Sorry,
headphones.
Man, no headphones.
All right. So everything I've mentioned, you can't eat or drink. So let's go. Let's do a banana.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A green apple you can take through.
Oh, green apple.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I got apple.
I got it.
A green apple and a coffee.
Holy crap.
Okay. All right. Can I take a lamp with me?
Nope.
Can I take sunglasses with me? It's got dark frame.
Yeah, you can take sunglasses.
All right. I got okay.
Oh, you figuring it out, all right?
Nope.
Okay.
I can take sunglasses, coffee, and green apple.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just keep rolling with this.
Mm-hmm.
An XLR cable that's black.
You cannot take an XLR cable that is black.
That was my test of theory of like dark things, but then green apple wouldn't work.
You can take some of the wood floor with you though if you want.
Wood floor. Okay. There's certain types of wood floor. Can I take carpet in there with me?
No.
Makes sense. Can I take...
You guys figuring this out at home? This is fascinating to me because he's actually writing stuff down and trying to think through it, which is different than normal. Normally, you're just like, forget it, get it over with.
Well, it's a different kind of thing. So I feel
it is a different kind of riddle.
Okay, can I take a fire extinguisher?
No, you can't take fire extinguisher.
My gosh, dude, this is dumb. Okay, I don't remember everything. Can I take a guitar?
No.
Can I take gum?
No.
Can I take socks?
No.
Jeans?
No.
No clothing?
No, maybe some clothing.
Clothing, of course. Can I take a washer?
A washer? No.
A washer? Can I take...
You can take tennis shoes if you want.
All right. So... Dude, there's a game me and you should do one time. Have you seen those guys that do the, like, hey, we each have to say a word at the same time, and then you have to try to get to say the same word. So I'd be like 1, 2, 3, you have to say the word that comes to your mind, and then you have to like figure out the words. After we get off podcast,
yeah, you gotta show me a video. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, anyway, all right. Here, let me say 3 more things. Can I take a book with me?
Yeah, you can take a book. Write it down.
Oh, yeah. All right, so here's what I got so far. I got wood floors, a green apple, coffee, not a coffee mug.
No.
That's stupid.
Just coffee.
Sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
I got mine right here. Shoes.
No, tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So not my Birks?
No Birkenstocks.
I ain't going through that green door.
Glass green door.
The glass green. Okay. All right. So I don't know how I'm supposed to even like get these things.
What do you notice that's similar between all of those words? Not in what they are. How do they look?
how they look. Are they like 2-syllable words or multiple syllables? I got wood floors, green apple, coffee, sunglasses, tennis shoes, a book. Some book.
Just book. Just general book.
Dude, I have no idea.
You don't notice anything about those words that's the same?
Oh, is there double letters?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so like wood, OO, green, EE,
and that's why they can
PP,
go through
FF, EE, SS, NN, OO. Okay.
That's why they can go through my glass green door.
Oh, because of the name.
So what's something else you're going to take with you?
Did you put me on the spot, dude? I gotta
I
think
know.
out of all the words in the English language. Okay.
You could take a beer through.
BEER. Dude, I don't know.
I don't know words.
I don't know words. How do you spell?
That's all right. You got it. A
pineapple. I can take a pineapple.
You can take a pineapple through.
There you go.
Good job. All right. And maybe you figured that out at home before him. Congratulations. Sorry, that was painful to have to listen to if you knew it and he didn't.
Just do time and a half. You'd be all right.
Time and okay. So that was Riddles with Pierce. Thanks for participating. Those are more fun.
Yeah, after this, I'll show you that game.
Okay,
it's fun. We did it at camp with our students, and it's you'd be yelling at each other. And
I love games where you're yelling at each other.
Yeah,
those are my favorite.
Great.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about is we just did an episode, either 1 or 2 episodes ago with Ashley Berry, which you could take a berry through the glass green door,
but not a Gibson.
We talk through like how we choose the music that we do, or how she chooses the music that she does to sing on Sunday mornings. Now, a big part of the church is and a responsibility of a pastor is to teach. That's actually one of the qualifications, to go back to our first section, is to be able to teach. That's and fun fact, that is the only one that's the only qualification of a pastor that is like an actual thing that you do. The rest are things that you are.
It's character.
So weigh it out. We focus on that one much more than we focus on all the others of character. But
yeah, because all Christians are supposed to have character.
Yeah. So so when we talk about teaching here, it's something that I had to kind of take over from Aaron when he left, and then you have now taken over, because you didn't have a teaching pastor job before this. You had my job. You were a youth pastor before. Yeah. So what's your? I could describe mine, but for you, how do you figure out what we're going to talk about on Sundays?
Yeah.
As one example.
Yeah, as an example, for example, we've been in the Psalm series. And part of how I got to Psalms is with my time being here and learning the church, learning the people, and just the because it takes a long time to get to know, especially when you pick up and move. Like, I don't know how often, if you're listening to this, that you've moved churches or moved to a new location. Yeah. And you know nobody. But everybody knows you. Like, that's hard. But as you start to get to know, like, you're just like kind of thrown into it, especially for me. Like, I was just kind of thrown into like, well, my job right now is strictly just to get to know people. And as I was getting to know people,
because that was intentional.
Which is great. And it's intentional for this purpose of, like, as I was learning about the church and learning more about where we wanted to go, and learning you and Dennis and the staff and the leaders and the deacons and just everybody, I kept getting overall I don't know what word I'm looking for. The overall. What I kept picking up on, Alex and I kept picking up on, is that a lot of people felt very tired and just kind of worn out. Yeah. And in need of rest. And we had scheduled out the rest of the James. And so that's when I was going to start teaching. And then we knew we kind of wanted to go through a vision series of, like, hey, as we're coming into this new time that I'm actually getting in here, me, you, and Dennis worked really collectively on how are we going to have a process of connect, imitate, and influence, because we have steps and things we want, like the values that mark us, but how do we get through that process? So we knew we wanted to do that. And then coming out of that, we went to our political series. And so as this entire time, I've been just praying. And I knew this thought of, our people feel tired and they need rest. And in my own personal time, I was studying Psalms. And so while I'm hearing and listening and getting to know people, I keep the impression of people that, man, they're kind of tired. They're kind of worn out. And then I'm reading about God's refuge, that he's rest. And then that's where the Easter sermon came out of, is that God is a harbor, or the church should be a harbor for people, a place for people to rest. And our people weren't, and so that's kind of how, like, through a lot of prayer and just through study and just learning people for this series example, as we're in Psalms, that's where this one came from. And the behind the scenes aspect of it is there's not this like scientific process to how like we just like we ring a bell and it just comes to our brain, like it's like ding, here's what you're gonna be teaching for the next year.
For real.
That's especially on a Sunday morning. Students was a little easier because like I knew the direction I wanted to go, but with a church as a whole, it's a lot.
Because you're really determining not just kind of the direction of just a service on Sunday morning. It's really a lot larger scale, a production, quote unquote, for that's a direction the whole church is kind of headed for the next.
Especially if our value is like, we want to see more and better followers of Jesus. Like, part of what we teach on Sundays isn't just ad hoc. Isn't just random. Like, it's for spiritual formation, like the direction we want to go as a church, like where the Lord has given us vision. And so that's not something we just like haphazardly, just randomly, we Google something, be like sermon series. Like, we might think if we're needing ideas, or like maybe what some other people have done, like we kind of want to address some of these. Helpful. It's helpful, but a lot of it is spent in getting to know its people and sitting in prayer. And we were saying right before we talked on this, I was saying, like, it's hard to describe sometimes when you know where you're going to go. Besides that, like, it's a gut feeling. Yeah. It's a spiritual gut feeling. Yeah. And that's where I came with the Psalms. Like, I knew immediately, like, yeah, this is it. This is where we're supposed to go. And
this was like the first series that you picked and headed up, all you. Being here.
Yeah, because cool. Me and you worked together on the Vision series, and then you did the political series, and then I had an idea for Easter and Palm Sunday, and I ran with it. And then this was like, because this is a long one. It's not like it's like a 3-week series. I think we're going to be in Psalms for like 13 or 14 weeks. But with that, teaching is a joy and it's fun, but it's also it's really hard, especially if you're trying to think, because one of the elements too that I don't want people to feel like off put by this at all. When we're praying and thinking through what to teach on, sometimes God lays people on our minds, and it's not to like burn axes or anything like that, but it's like what I know this person's walking through, and we pray that speaks to that person, because there's all sorts of people in our church right now who are going through all sorts of things, right? Difficult things, challenging things that you're left to be like, what do I do? And yet, like, we're still praying in that. And I've seen that, like, the Lord work through the Psalm series of how, like, it resonates with different people at different times. And one of the things I know you probably had this happen to you. Well, people will come up to you and be like, oh man, when you said this a couple of weeks ago, you said this, and that just really stuck with me. And I'm like, I don't remember what I said, and it's just like, cause you spend so much time, but then for teaching, you spend so much time on that text, and then you have to move on to the next one. You have to begin immediately immersed in that, and so it's just like you have to spend a lot of time in words, and that's probably been the hardest thing I've really noticed about my own self, is like you're just the mental weight of it. Yeah. And I know this is a really long answer to be able to say that, like, we pray a whole bunch on it. That's like an element, with like school teachers, like you have a curriculum, you kind of have like what direction you need to go. And we might get some ideas. Like, I might be looking around like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about doing this. Like, for example, when we come out of Psalms, we'll be having guest speakers to kind of help us, like, to give us a break just to work on, as we're getting into throughout basically the month of August. We'll have some guest speakers come in, a couple people we know, and one of my best friends is going to be coming in to teach. And so,
what date is he coming in?
I think he's coming in the last week of August. I think I put it on the calendar.
Okay. I need to look.
Yeah. But that's to allow us to be able to have time to be able to work on all the other details, the administrative side of ministry, but also to be able to pray for the rest of the year from basically September to December. Here's the direction we're going. And so church, if you're listening and you have something that's God's laid on your heart of like, maybe this is a direction you want to go.
A series you want to teach?
No, I'm not saying that, but like if you feel like, because sometimes we do hear that, like where the pulse of some people are at. And that's some things we ask the pastoral advisory team is like, where do you feel like our people is at right now? And that's a good direction too. And we just try to know our flock, know the people in our church.
Yep.
And the coolest thing too is sometimes we don't know how it's going to speak to people, but the Spirit does.
Yeah.
And it's cool when things just line up.
Yeah.
Because we see that happen a lot.
Yeah. That was, the whole thing for me. I didn't have experience in that realm of just kind of setting, teaching direction. I did for students obviously, but for the whole church. And when Aaron stepped away, eyes were on me to kind of sort a lot of that out. And I'm like, well, okay. And one of the first things that I did was teach on Nehemiah, and
which is an interesting of like, oh, he's rebuilding, which is interesting to like go to like Nehemiah, like an Old Testament book, like New Testament's a lot easier to teach through,
It is 100%. But the reason was they were rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem to get them kind of back to where they're being effective again and being a beacon of light to the nations as they were supposed to be. And it came from a book that I read years ago, I think in college, just the phrase, hand me another brick. And that was kind of the idea of like, they were all working together. They were on the defense of the enemy's attacks when they were trying to rebuild and just trying to glorify God and fortifying the city. And it was just very apt for where we were at as a church and just kind of rebuilding some stuff, restructuring some stuff. And I loved it.
Yeah. And well, even with that, like with both my Psalm series and your Nehemiah series, it's like we weren't out of touch with our people. And that's where, definitely the plus of us being a smaller church, like we're not this like ginormous church like a Tony Evans or like these people have like thousands of people in their church. Like I'm sure they have a census they take and like kind of like direction. I'm sure they have prayer things that going on, like get direction of where they want to go, the different stuff. But like we can be so more in tune with our people. Just because of it's possible with us being such a not a mega church by any means, but it's just kind of fun. Like
it is.
Sometimes they create it. Like you got to be really creative too, and that's where coming here. It's really like I've stretched my brain a lot more, just trying to think like creatively and like because again our mindset is to no matter who you are, where you've been, there's always hope for a new story in Jesus, and having this thought process of like the whole spectrum of who's in our sanctuary at one time. People who believe faithfully for years and people who don't, who are skeptic and don't want anything to do with it. And then you have like middle school students who don't listen at all, And so,
but they do,
and they listen their own way. And it's like trying to tailor
all these
different things. It really forces you to be very creative and just think through, but also there's a lot of trust baked into it that when we come into teaching, we pray we've done our due diligence, and we have like we study very diligently throughout the week, and like this week you're teaching, so I don't have to near as much. But then again, I'll start getting ahead for the following week, So we're constantly teaching and learning and wanting to learn, and that's so much about teaching that I'm learning is like it's never stop. It never stops.
And a lot of it, when it comes to our Equip podcast and Teach on Sundays, a lot of it's just what is going to be most effective for our church where they are at right now. And we hope our church is not just present here, like gathering together, but also present in their neighborhoods and in the lives of those around them. So how can we equip the saints for the work of the ministry where they are at? And that's what I loved so much over the couple years that I was teaching primarily. It was way too much to do everything else, but just that alone was refreshing and in a weird way. really, really fun. It had its moments that sucked, but it was really fun too. But you're kind of learning very similar things to what I did through that of trying to balance it all, and the mental burden of doing it every stinking week, and
and just trying to be present too. And then what's hard about my life right now with this is like you try to be very present, and you want to be present in people's lives, and it's hard because people work throughout the day. And it's hard to, remember everybody, and it's not like it's hard to remember everybody because there's a lot of people, but also like, oh, I haven't seen so-and-so, I haven't talked to so-and-so. And like, you're constantly trying to like, oh, I got to text that person. I got to remember this person. I got to call this person. I should go see this person. It's like constant. And here's my plea. And like with teaching, our goal as pastors is we want to equip the saints for the work of ministry. We want to equip those who are listening, to those in our church who sit here 20 feet to our right now, for the work of ministry, so that they can do the work of ministry. And that, because like me, you, and Dennis, we can't do everything. We try to think we can, but sometimes
we can lead and equip.
We can lead and equip, and we can minister in circumstances as a church member. But we can't be everywhere at one time. And we want to see people become more and better followers of Jesus, so that they can meet needs where they're at. And it's so cool. And we can maybe end with this, but it's so cool when we hear of people who are meeting needs and ministering to people in our church by other people in our church. And we didn't even know about it. Like, I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I agree too. Well, hopefully that was kind of fun to think through. It's always like you said, it's a never ending, consistent thing. People show up and they expect you to have done your job of preparing to equip them. It's your job to do just that. And it's been fun to already watch you grow a lot in how you communicate. And I'm excited to see where that continues to go. But the choosing of what you teach and the series and everything is just part of that. And sometimes it's books, sometimes it's topics. There's value to both. Like we did Jesus, Church, and Politics, there's not a book of the Bible called Jesus, the Church, and Politics.
That'd be wild.
And that would be wild. It'd be like, man, they wrote that just for this. But there's things that influence our people and influence our church that we need to talk about. So sometimes it will happen. We've done so I can't even think of some, like we did one called just for fun called Buzzwords years ago, where we talked about
words we throw out all the time that we actually don't
words that we don't know. I'd love to do that again, a different form of it, because I've created another list of all these different things. But that's beside the point. This
is right here is how we come up with topics sometimes. That we it's like series.
Some of it's this. Some it's this.
We start talking through things. Yeah, because it's like, for example, we have a pastor's meeting with Dennis here in like 40 minutes where we can talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. As always, church, thank you for joining us. This has been the Equip Podcast, equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. So now it's our turn. Let's go do it.